Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you so much for joining us today for this special Ask Us Anything presentation. Well, maybe not anything, but most things. We're here today to talk about Tergar's plans and activities and give you an opportunity to ask whatever it is that you're interested about, what we're working on or how we operate, those kinds of things. So welcome and thank you for being here. We'll start by, I'd like to welcome, there are people on Zoom and there are also people on YouTube. We had almost 700 people register for this event. So thanks again for being here. I'd like to just briefly, for the people who are in Zoom, go over some of the features there. So I think we have a slide to show for that. Today we're keeping our chat open so you can say hello and make comments, but we're not really pulling our questions from the chat today. We'll be using a Q&A form, which if you've taken part in some of our retreats recently, you'll be familiar with this. This helps us to get the translation done on questions that are submitted. So you can scan that QR code or you can use the bit.ly address Tergar webinar questions and submit your questions there in your own language. That way our form will translate it and make it a little bit easier for our translators and our panelists as we go through. So we will have the Zoom Q&A button working. In case you're having any technical issues, that's the best thing to use that Zoom Q&A button for. But again, please try to submit your questions using that Google form. And if you're on YouTube, just post your questions on YouTube and we have somebody who's monitoring that chat and will be able to take them and transfer them into the form for us. So thank you so much for participating in that way. Now we have two short polls that we just want to go over before we go into it. And the first one is, what language are you listening in? We do have our translators here for the people who are on Zoom. A lot of people who are listening in English only might be on YouTube. So let's see here. We're waiting for more people to respond, if possible, if you're on Zoom. Great. Is this okay? So it looks like we have mostly French and German and some Russian, at least in Zoom at this point in time, but it's a little early. Maybe some people will be joining. Okay, and the next poll is, oh, no, we're not going to do that second poll, sorry. So the way our program is formatted is actually I'll be introducing our executive director and one of our instructors, Cortland Dahl, to come and give a short presentation talking about Tergar's current activities and our plans for the future. And then we'll go through the questions that have been submitted. So at any time between, starting now, you can go ahead and submit your questions. We have the link in the chat where you can click in order to get to the form to submit your questions. So I wanted to do just a kind of a short bio for Cortland, but the one I found was sort of long, so I'm gonna skip around. But I do want to mention, that Cortland is not only the executive director of Tergar International, and of course also one of our senior instructors, but he's also a translator and an author and a scientist. And He began his journey in the 1990s when he first started learning to meditate, and he has traveled all around the world and lived in Tibetan refugee settlements for many years during time. And during his travels, that's when he became fluent in Tibetan and earned a master's degree in Buddhist studies. So now he moved on to help found Tergar with Mingyur Rinpoche in 2009. And since then, he received his PhD, the first ever in mind, brain, and contemplative science from the University of Wisconsin-Madison under Dr. Richard Davidson. So anyway, we're very proud and pleased to have Cortland with us. His book just came out this week. So welcome, Cortland. Please tell us all about Tergar.
Thank you, Beth. Thank you for the kind welcome and introduction, and great to be here with you all. We've been looking forward to this. We have so many events and courses and all sorts of things going on, but this is one of the times that is a little less scripted, and it's just time to connect with all of you, hear what's on your mind. And, we've always really tried from the beginning, following Rinpoche's example, of just almost to have dialogue and just an open, honest conversation at the heart of everything we do in Tergar. So this, of course, is just for that very purpose, just to really hear what's on your mind, if you have concerns, ideas, suggestions. So many of you have already written in questions and comments, and so we'll have a lot to talk about. But we thought it might be good just to start by sharing some of the big plans that we have in store, just so you can get a bird's eye view of everything that we're doing. So I'm going to share my slides here, and we'll just start at the very top. So I don't think I probably need to tell you what Tergar is all about, but you might not know the exact way that we kind of give voice to the spirit and the mission of Tergar. And it is really to transform hearts and minds by making the ancient practice of meditation accessible in the modern world. And this, you can see, really, this is what Rinpoche is all about. For those of you who have studied with Rinpoche, and I'm guessing almost everybody here has attended retreats with him and been around him, if not in person, at least through the courses and online events that we offer. And I've been very fortunate to just spend a lot of time with him over the years. And it is just amazing how you can just see in the way he lives and the way he spends his time, and how tirelessly he is just there to be of service, that this is really what his life is all about, that he really genuinely sees this potential we all have to thrive, to flourish, even beyond that, to awaken to our true nature. And also that we have this treasure of the lineage, these ancient teachings, but in the very traditional form, they don't always resonate. So the Buddhist tradition from the very beginning has always been a work in progress. The teachings have changed and been adapted. They've been evolving really from the very beginning. And that's actually by design. That's as the Buddha intended the teachings to evolve. And there's this principle that we call upaya, or skillful means, which is that we keep the essence of the teachings, but then we just use whatever is at our disposal that will help us and others benefit from these teachings, so we can be somewhat flexible and fluid. So that's really what we're all about, following Mingyur Rinpoche's example. This is a troubling time for the world. It kind of always seems like every generation talks about, things seem to be especially chaotic, or the challenges humanity faces are especially intense. But right now, I think we would all agree that between climate change, between all of the wars around the world, social upheaval, even the difficulties with politics in so many countries, there's just a lot of massive problems, massive amounts of suffering in the world. And so we really feel called to do as much as we can to help alleviate suffering and to do as much good as we can in the world. So the way we've expressed that in trying to formulate what would that look like if we were really to do something impactful in the world, it's not just enough in our minds to reach a lot of people. You know, we can, through social media and YouTube and all sorts of things like that, you can reach millions of people these days. But what we really care about is enduring change, changing people's lives, not just for a moment, but hopefully for their entire lifetime. So this idea of really helping people get on the path and helping them live with more awareness, compassion, and wisdom, that's really what we're focused on. And you can imagine that organizations have their strategic plans. Our strategic plan is basically the three jewels. This was figured out a long time ago. We don't feel like we need to do something new and different when there's tried and true ways of benefiting people. But you can see the way we're thinking about this is really that what we can uniquely do is provide expert guidance. And this is everything from Mingyur Rinpoche to local practice leaders. I'm guessing some of you are leaders in your own communities. So really just providing guidance, support, and good instruction for people. Also, of course, and this is what Mingyur Rinpoche does uniquely well, is a clear path. So Rinpoche is a master of constructing the path. Different teachers have their different strengths, and he's just so good at laying out the step-by-step process whereby each of us can live with awareness, compassion, and wisdom. So that, of course, is at the center of what we do. And then finally, a diverse, caring community. And that is, again, one of the truly unique things about Tergar. You can just see even on this Zoom meeting, we have people from all over the world. When we have online events or even in-person events, oftentimes there are people from 40, 50, even 60 countries participating. So it is just this amazing global community of people like us all over the world that are just share this passion for meditation and for bringing these teachings into our lives. So that's kind of the high level. And I wanted to zoom in with a little more detail and just share some of the big plans, some of the new things that are on the horizon in the coming years. So I'm going to go through each of the main areas of our offerings, starting with the joy of living. And I'll just share a little bit about what we're doing and what we have actively planned. So a big part of what we are working on now is really the very beginning of the path for people. Like, what are the first steps that people take on the path? When Tergar first started, we were focused very much on things like the Joy of Living program, which in a way, and certainly at the time we built it, felt like it was very accessible, but actually it's a pretty intensive program. The Joy of Living is really at least 18 months, sometimes 2 years of steady practice. It's a big step that many people probably are not ready for right when they might first encounter Mingyur Rinpoche or read The Joy of Living or watch a YouTube video. So we're really trying to think about how is it that people first find the practice of meditation? How do they connect with Tergar and with Rinpoche and his style of practice? And how can we just best meet people where they are in their busy lives and just make it easy for them to begin their own journey? So the next part of that, which kind of fits right on the kind of right next to that effort, is that once people have connected, how can they actually start practicing easily? And as I said, Joy of Living, the way it was constructed a few years ago, is not a small step for a lot of people. It's actually a big leap. It's a big commitment of time. For some, it might feel like a big commitment of money. It's, you might sign up for a subscription. And even though it might just be, $20 a month, for people who are used to getting free apps or paying $5 a month for an app, that might feel like a lot, or people just simply might not have the financial means to get started. So sometimes it can be time, sometimes it can be money, sometimes it can just feel like a big thing. And so again, we are trying to find ways to make it easy for people to take those steps and really get on a path of enduring change that isn't going to ask them to make some big leap that they are not ready for. So the how of this, how we're doing that, of course, are things you've probably heard about. We have a new anytime, anywhere meditation program. We're just launching, we're in fact just around the corner is a new mobile app that we've been developing. And our hope is this will make it easy for people to get started, and especially for younger generations who are used to doing everything via technology and having really simple, bite-sized chunks that make it very easy for people to get going on the path. Another part of this is just simply making the design of the things we do a little bit more easy and intuitive. This is also probably something you've probably all experienced. There is just so much on offer in the Tergar community. There are so many retreats, there are so many online courses, there's many communities around the world, and that can just be confusing in terms of how that all fits together. So again, trying to just make this hopefully a very intuitive, easy, accessible experience for people on that early stage in their own journey. So this is a one that I'm specifically particularly interested in and excited about. You know, Rinpoche has been talking about the path in terms of this very traditional framework of view, meditation, and application. View being our perspective, kind of how we see ourselves and how we see the world. Meditation, of course, being the way we experience that directly. And then finally, application. How do we bring our view and that new perspective into all the many things we do in our daily lives? How can we bring our meditation practice into our life with our family and friends? How does it show up when we're sitting down for dinner or getting up in the morning? How does it show up when we're going to work and doing all the many things we do every day? And this is where there's really just a huge opportunity, again, to meet people where they are and find new creative ways to help them and to support them in applying the practice of meditation and the cultivation of awareness, compassion, and wisdom in their actual daily lives. Not just they meditate for 20 minutes and then they're done, but where the path and these practices really become something you do for many small moments throughout your day, wherever you are and whoever you're with. And finally, we have a lot of work to do in simply making all of our offerings accessible in other languages. Right now, there is an enormous amount available in English, but much less so in other languages. So we want to simply put, we just want to do a better job and do more to make these teachings and all the many retreats and courses and so on available wherever Tergar students happen to be in the world. So a lot of work there as well. So that's the joy of living. We also, of course, have a lot going on in our Buddhist programming. So similar to what I mentioned earlier with the joy of living, a big part of this is just looking at the path and how we've constructed the path. And I think what we see when we look at it is that there are some things that we're probably doing reasonably well, and there's other areas where we really need a lot of work. So for example, right now, the joy of living path is pretty clear. There's a lot of teachings, a lot of support. And similarly, in the path of liberation, the Buddhist path of practice, there's a lot of teachings, a lot of courses and support, but there's a gap between those two. So if you, for example, finish the Joy of Living level 3, and you know that Tergar has all this Buddhist programming, but you're really not sure if that's for you, we don't have a lot on offer that helps people explore what the Buddhist tradition that is found in Tergar, in the Tergar community is all about, that helps them to see whether or not it's a good fit for them or whether they are just want to stay more in the joy of living space. So that is a huge part of what we're doing. In fact, we're just about to release a new course called A Meditator's Guide to Buddhism that will be the first of a series of experiential courses that will be that bridge between joy of living and path of liberation. So another thing that we're doing, which we're quite excited about, is creating more step-by-step instructions for people who are on the path of liberation. So for people who are doing any of the path of liberation levels, and there's 5 of them, that there will be actually a course that kind of takes you by the hand and goes with you as you practice in the same way that the Joy of Living courses do online. So it'll be a much deeper richer, hopefully more supportive journey on the path of liberation that we've had in the past. So we've already started doing that, and we will continue to release all of these different courses for basically every level of practice that we have in both the Joy of Living, which we already have, and now adding to that the path of liberation. Another thing we started to do more recently is to make some of our courses available as standalone offerings. What we realized is that we have this amazing library of courses that we've been building up over now many years. But usually most of what our community is focused on is just whatever the live course is. So we're doing Abhidharma now, of course, and most of the people are focused on that. But that means everything else is just sort of sitting there collecting dust. And we released, just as an experiment, the Way of the Bodhisattva course, just to see if they would be interested in that. And we found that there was quite a bit of interest in that. So we're going to continue to focus on that as well. And then finally, this is the exact same point as I mentioned with the Joy of Living, but we just want to make these teachings that we find and that we have in the Path of Liberation and the Vajrayana online program available in more languages, in more countries, and to more of our Tergar communities. So that covers the Joy of Living and Path of Liberation space. Sorry for the barrage of information. You're getting a whirlwind tour of what is actually going to be years of work. So in the community space, this has actually been a huge focus for us in the past 6 months. We've been stepping back and really completely reimagining what the community, the vision for community is. And that covers everything from what communities do. In other words, what is the programming? What do communities offer? Even very kind of practical rituals and supports for communities. Like, what do you do if you're having a child and you want to have that be expressed in your local community, or you're getting married, births, deaths, all sorts of major life milestones, in addition to the normal programming we do for, related to Joy of Living and Path of Liberation. So everything from that side of things to more practical sides of things, like how do we ensure that we have a healthy group of volunteers that are well managed and not getting burnt out, that can support communities? How can we have a financial model that can make sure that communities are sustainable and they can be thriving over the long term? Really just everything that communities need to truly thrive and flourish. So a second part of that is a new platform that we hope to launch that will allow communities to have much greater access to programming and teachings and all of the wonderful Tergar guides that are around the world that can help them kind of to build their own programming around. So for example, you might have somebody offering a teaching online, and you can, if you're in a local community, you could build your weekly sessions around that online programming. So basically, we're trying to find new and creative ways to support people to gather together in local communities and really to get a lot of guidance and support for their practice, both together, both individually and what they do together as a community. And then finally, just simply making community more available. We're not, trying to force the development of communities, but what we found is that a lot of people would love to have communities in their area, but they just don't exist. So we want to make it very easy for people who are interested to start their own communities, which might at the beginning just be a few people practicing together in somebody's living room and just letting it grow organically along with the needs and the interests of the students. And then in a related area is our teacher training. And we've, again, done a lot in this space as well. So we already, as you can see, this already started really at a pilot level last year. And this year, we kind of launched the full-on teacher training course, or actually we completed our first cohort of teacher training. So we had, I think, 90 people in our first teacher training cohort, and they just graduated. This like literally just finished in the past month. And now we have a new cohort. I think there's almost 200 people in the new cohort. So hundreds of people who are being trained to teach basic meditation practices, to specifically to offer the Anytime, Anywhere meditation course. And so that is really exciting. And there's been a whole team that has been working very hard for years now to make that a reality. We are also planning to offer, along with this vision for community, a much more deep, in-depth, and systematic training for local leaders. So this will be, in a way, you can think about it almost like what we're doing for meditation teacher training, but really for all the qualities and skills that we think are needed for local communities to flourish. So that is going to be developed starting late this year and especially next year and the year after. And then finally, there will be a Dharma Guide program. So this is basically building on the first item here, the meditation teacher training, for people who want to go beyond secular meditation and to actually offer basic Dharma teachings, like teaching the Four Noble Truths, the six paramitas, kind of basic Dharma teachings, and also support our Buddhist community. We are going to be creating a new Dharma Guide program. So that was a whirlwind tour. I know it's probably a lot to digest. I believe that was the last slide I wanted to share. So why don't we use the rest of the time for Q&A? There's a lot of really, really great questions, and we covered a lot of territory. So I imagine that sparked a lot of new questions. So you can write anything in the chat, and Beth is going to tee up some of the questions some of you have already asked.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Cortland. We did get some questions that were submitted in advance, which was very helpful. So thank you to the people who were able to do that. And any new questions, again, please use the form. There's a link in the chat and or the bit.ly bit.ly/Tergar webinar questions. Okay, so first question for you. This is a good one. What are Tergar's measures of success, and how successful have you been?
That's a great question. And actually one of the areas we've really focused on in the past year or two, and even more so next year probably, is really how do we measure whether or not the things we do are working or not. So at the end of the day, I would say the biggest measure of success, kind of echoing something I said earlier in the presentation, is really just how many people are on the path and are really consistently practicing. Everything else that we do is basically for that purpose, to help people find the path, to help them stay on the path, and to help them benefit as much as possible from the path. So in terms of how we are doing, the honest answer is that we are getting better and better at measuring these things. And it's been challenging because if you just, for example, ask, well, how many people are actively practicing on the path? And how would you define that? And we could say, okay, well, the path for us is the joy of living and the path of liberation. And then we can say, okay, well, how many people are actually on those paths? Well, it actually gets pretty complicated then, because we have the things that we offer. For example, we have retreats on all the different levels. We have our online courses, and we can actually measure that. We can know, for example, how many people are actively taking part in the Joy of Living online program. We know how many people are attending Path of Liberation retreats. But there are also things happening in local communities, and we don't always have access to that information. There are other people, many students who, for example, participate both in Tergar Asia events and training and also come and take part in Tergar International's trainings. So we think it's somewhere around 10,000 people, but we're trying to get more precise with that. So not only do we know how many people are on the path, but we can start to really understand in a more detailed way, where are they? When have people kind of fallen off the path or just gotten stuck somewhere along the path, so that hopefully we can better support them. So that, I would say, is the main metric, but we have all sorts of different data points and metrics that we keep track of. And yeah, I could probably talk all day about data. As a scientist, I tend to geek out about this stuff. but generally speaking, I think we really want to know, is the effort that we're putting towards all these things really working? Like, are people really genuinely getting on the path and benefiting from the path? So there's a lot more we could do, but I would say we've probably improved quite a bit in the past year or two.
Thank you. The next question is about one of our beloved teachers. Where will Kempo Kunga, live after he comes out of retreat? I have heard a couple of different things. One, he will return to the United States. Two, he will live in Portugal at the new retreat center. Please clarify. Thanks.
Yes. Well, this is a good question I have as well. I recently asked Mingyur Rinpoche that very question. The first thing I should say is I think it's probably pretty fluid at this point. So I'm going to tell you what I've heard, but I wouldn't be surprised if it changes a little bit. So, as some of you know, and we're going to talk about this later because there's been a lot of questions about it, there is a 3-year retreat being planned to happen in Portugal. And Kempo Kunga will likely spend part of the year, and what I've heard is 3 months of the year in Portugal, being the so-called Vajra master, like the retreat, the lead teacher for the retreat there in Portugal. So he will be there part of the year, from what Mingyur Rinpoche has said, and also in Minneapolis, where he lived previously for part of the year. So that is what I've currently been told. And I know that he would like to return to the United States. I think he quite liked his home in the Midwest. I'm from Minneapolis, so that makes me very, very happy. But things change, and the situation is quite fluid. So I would probably have a wait and see attitude about that. But that's the most recent news I've heard.
Thanks. The next question is about volunteering. What options are there to help Tergar through small, simple, distant tasks, such as transcription, proofreading, or editing of documents, helping with testing and checking of websites, etc.? I'd like to help, but need to work at my own pace and at a time that works well in the time zone where I live. Thank you.
Yeah, great question. In fact, we have one of our organizational goals for this year is to improve our own process in working with volunteers and making it possible for people like you who would like to help to get involved. And the way we look at this is, I mean, it of course helps us to have people helping with a variety of tasks. But more importantly, this is part of our own spiritual journey. I mean, I started as a volunteer. Actually, the reason I probably ended up helping in the ways that I have working with Rinpoche is just because every time I saw him, I was just saying, if there's anything I can do, let me know. I'd love to help. I mean, I'll sweep up the shrine room if you want me to, like whatever. I was just basically offering to help. And he turned me down. He finally just probably got so annoyed that he finally gave me a job. But anyways, it's been a huge part, not only for me, but I think many of us working for Tergar, like Beth started as a volunteer and then slowly got more and more involved. And many people, have other jobs or family responsibilities, but still just include volunteering as a part of their spiritual path. So you can reach out to us at any time if you'd like to volunteer and you have a skill set that you'd like to offer, or you just have an area, like you mentioned, proofreading and editing and translating, things like that. You can really just email any of us in Tergar International, and we can route your email to the right group or the right person. And generally, as I said, we're hopefully will create a clearer process that will make it easier for people who want to volunteer to get connected and just to see what the opportunities are, and for us internally to more effectively work with volunteers. So it's kind of the right amount of work and works well for, as you said, it needs to work for people who might have a lot going on in their lives. So yeah, I would say just reach out to us, and you can expect probably to hear more over the next year as we put a little more time and energy into thinking how to make this a little bit clearer for people out in the community.
Thanks, Court. And I put a couple of links in the chat. There's a web page there's a page on our site, tergar.org/volunteering. And there's an email address. It could be volunteers. I didn't test, but volunteer@tergar.org, I believe it is. And we often list openings that we have on the volunteering page, but we can use volunteers at any time. So if you go to that page and you don't see any openings that look specific to you, we still encourage you to just reach out and say what kind of stuff you're interested in doing. There still might be something. The next question is one that, Cortland, you addressed a little bit in your overview presentation, but someone has asked specifically, what is the path to become a Joy of Living teacher?
Yeah, so that does very much relate to what I mentioned earlier in the realm of teacher training. So in the past, we had a somewhat informal process, and it worked well when Tergar was a little bit smaller and there were fewer communities. But now that we have, tens of thousands of students all over the world, it can get a little challenging to figure out how to do this. So we've tried to create a much more systematic approach to doing this process of teacher training. And basically what we have is the two pieces I mentioned earlier. There is the meditation teacher training, which is a year-long training program basically to teach secular meditation, not more kind of formal Buddhist practice, but things that are coming more in the Joy of Living style of meditation practice, and very specifically to teach anytime, anywhere meditation. And then for people who have graduated from that and been certified and want to go further, they don't necessarily have to, but for those who want to go more into the Buddhist side of things, then, as I mentioned, there is the Dharma Guide program. So maybe we could put a link if one of the TI team wants to put a link to what we call MTP, which just means the Meditation Teacher Program. That's really the place to get started. That would be the training we offer for people who are interested in offering secular meditation teachings. Thank you, Beth.
Sorry, I messed it up. It was actually training.tergar.org, and I missed the dot the first time I posted it.
No worries.
The next question, and actually, if you go to tergar.org, there is a little menu in the upper right corner that just looks like a bunch of blocks. But if you click on it, it gives you the links to all of the other sites that are more specific, like the training, the meditation teacher program, or Vajrayana online, or Joy of Living online course. So you can, from the main tergar.org website, you can get to all of the other more specific content sites. The next question was submitted in German, and they're asking, are there plans for Rinpoche to travel to Europe again next year and teach?
Yes. So he will be traveling quite a bit this year. Obviously, he kind of took the year off. There's this whole thing of what Tibetans think of as like an obstacle year, where lamas tend to stay close to home and focus on practice. So Rinpoche will be teaching in July in Germany, and he'll be doing Path of Liberation levels 1 and 2, plus some additional secular events. And then he's also going to be in Canada, Mexico, Brazil, Russia, and South Africa. So we can put all those countries in the chat just to remind you all. But he will be traveling quite extensively and offering some teachings in all those areas. And we will, of course, be sending out more details about that in the months to come.
Okay, got it. Thanks. So you mentioned there were a lot of questions that came in about the 3-year retreat, about the retreat center, about retreats in general. And of course, we know that Mingyur Rinpoche is all about retreat. And if you're part of the Path of Liberation, there are, as part of your homework, there's requirements for individual retreats. So one of the first questions, maybe I'll just take a quick stab at, and then we'll go into some of the others. But this question was submitted in German. And the question is there a place wherever where you can hold shorter or longer individual retreats? So we'll talk about the Portugal Center in just a second, but just to say that on Vajrayana Online, there is a retreat course. And actually, I think you don't even have to access Vajrayana Online. There's a retreat resources page. And one of the things that we did was we put together a list that was kind of crowdsourced of places that people like to go and do an individual retreat. Because if you're motivated to do an individual retreat, just finding a conducive location near you is, is really, something that would be helpful for people. So there's a list there, but just looking, kind of Googling, places nearby where you are. And so that was about individual retreat. And then the next question, Cortland, will start to get a little more detailed about Portugal. Is Tergar an active, meaning Tergar International, an active partner of the Tergar Retreats Initiative? And can you kindly explain more about this important initiative in Portugal? Thank you.
Yeah, another good question. So, for many, many years, and by we, I don't mean Tergar International, but really just those, Tergar students, many of us in the Tergar community have wanted to do longer retreats and to see more intensive opportunities for practice as part of what we do as a community. And the reality is just that Tergar International, because there is so much focus on shorter retreats and online programming, it was just difficult to make that happen. And in part because of that, in part just because of the people that came forward to help Rinpoche with manifest his vision for retreats, a new organization was formed, which is what we're talking about here, Tergar Retreats. And I think we can put there's the link. Beth just put the link in the chat. So this is an entirely new organization that is focused specifically on longer retreats. And I think the way we're thinking about it, we work very closely together, the different organizations in the mandala. So Tergar International being one of those, Tergar Retreats being a newer organization, the Tergar Institute, which some of you might have heard about, of course, Tergar Asia, which is our partner organization in Asia. We all are meet regularly and in conversation and try to coordinate, the different work we do. But what Tergar Retreats is doing is specifically longer term retreats. Tergar International offers retreats that are anywhere from, a half a day to 3-4 days. Occasionally, we might do something closer to a week, but really we haven't done anything longer than a week in quite a while. So Tergar Retreats, this new organization, is going to focus basically on a week and longer, all the way up to a traditional 3-year retreat, which they're actively planning for 2025. So we definitely work together. We talk frequently and we're coordinating, as I said, and it's a new organization. So it's going to take a while to fully manifest all their ideas and vision and plans. But I think in the long term, they really want to be offering retreats of a variety of lengths and, just provide immersive practice experiences around the world. But the short term is really focused on the 3-year retreat in Portugal, which will happen in late 2025, it looks like.
Great, thanks. So a lot of these questions are the same. So let me just look and see. So you just mentioned an update on the 3-year retreat. Late 2025 seems to be the earliest it could happen, and there's still a possibility it could be pushed out a little bit later than that. You mentioned that Kempo Kunga would be the retreat master for part of the time. So I think that's all the details that we actually have for now. And there's an info sheet that's available through the tergarretreats.org website.
Yeah, exactly. I would just recommend you reach out to them if you have questions. I mean, we can do our best to answer, but they're going to have obviously the most current information. And you're right, it may have already gotten pushed out. I think I might have even heard that it's now early. It might even be early 2026. So I've heard late 2025, early 2026. So, but definitely check with them for definitive information.
Yeah. And then the next question mentioned, it's a little longer and had some of the same questions within it, but a mention of the Karuna Retreat Center. So that's something a little bit different. Do you you know about that so you can explain the Karuna Retreat Center?
Yeah, in fact, I was just looking this up. Here's a link to it. I just put it there myself. Actually, I myself did a retreat there last December, and it was just beautiful. For those of you who are in Europe or can travel, they do group and individual retreats, have space for both group and individual retreats. I did a solitary retreat there, as I said, in December. And Tergar Retreats, the new organization we just mentioned, they've been hosting some retreats there as well. Um, so this is a space of some students of Mingyur Rinpoche, and they have really just offered the Tergar community use of this space when we want to use it for group retreats. And it's just a stunning location. It's it's in southern Portugal, up on the side of a mountain, very quiet, beautiful, natural area. Um, so this will likely be one of the places, specifically in Europe, where we're offering some longer retreats. This is a different spot, I should say, than the 3-year retreat. The place where the 3-year retreat is going to happen is a little bit more, it's further north from this place. It's more in central Portugal, near Coimbra, if you know where that is. And that too is just a stunning location, kind of in wine country. Um, but it's a different place than from the Karuna spot. So both of these, there will be different retreats of different lengths happening.
And then I think you alluded to this or addressed this, but are there any plans to build or acquire a retreat center in the United States?
Not right now. It's certainly possible. I think our mantra has always been our focus is on people and programs versus buying real estate and building physical centers. And it's not that we're necessarily opposed to that. It's just that we only want to be thinking about real estate and having our own land when the need is just very clearly there in the community, and the way to support it is also there in the community. What we don't want to happen is we kind of get land and then we basically we have to think too much just about getting money, and we start running programs to get the money to pay for the space, which is sort of like this negative loop that can happen when we really just want to keep the focus on people and programs. So it might happen at some point, but we don't have any immediate plans for that right now.
Thanks. And then the next question is about dates of solo retreats in India or Nepal in 2024 or 2025. So I think that this isn't something that Tergar International normally um, organizes, as we discussed earlier. But there are ways that you can connect with Tergar monasteries and schedule something. Is that true, Cortland?
Yeah, so Tergar Ling, which is Rinpoche's monastery in Kathmandu, they have a really beautiful guest house. And there's a link. We could probably put the link to the kind of the Tergar Sangha website if somebody could track that down. And that basically just has a listing of all these different organizations and parts of Rinpoche's mandala, from Tergar International, Tergar Retreats, Tergar Institute, the monasteries. Thank you, Beth. So that's the place to go if you're ever interested in going, to one of the monasteries. You can usually contact them and see what the options are. And then in places like Kathmandu or in India, there's of course many other places you can do retreat. And if you do a little research online, you could probably turn some of those up. But as Beth mentioned, we have this retreat course and retreat resources in Vajrayana Online, and you can always reach out to us. We could usually find somebody to help if you just need suggestions about where to look. We'd be happy to help.
Thank you, Cortland. The next two questions are similar, so I'll read them together. How is Tergar related to the Kagyu lineage? And how does Tergar differ from other Buddhist denominations?
Yeah, interesting question. So, like any meditative spiritual tradition within Buddhism, there are many, many different lineages. Um, of course, you have it across different countries and regions. You have Theravada Buddhism that you find in Southeast Asia and Sri Lanka. You have like the Zen tradition and Chan Buddhism and many other lineages in East Asia. And in Tibetan Buddhism, you find a kind of a very unique uh, form of Buddhism. And there's a lot to say. I mean, you could, you could, whole books have been written about this. Um, but I think what you could say is unique about the Tibetan approach is it's rather than being focused kind of on a specific sutra or a specific teaching or a very kind of specific strand of Buddhist practice or a philosophical school, the Tibetan approach kind of weaves together a broad array of teachings and practices that were found in Buddhism at the kind of the latest stage of its evolution within ancient India. And specifically, like the traditional terms we would say are the three yanas, kind of like three big kind of streams of Buddhist study and practice that are kind of woven together. And the Buddhist tradition has kind of found a way to kind of create from all of these many teachings a kind of a clear, consistent path. And then within the Tibetan tradition, that's kind of about the Tibetan approach generally. You have many more kind of sub lineages that all share that same approach that I just mentioned. But there's some subtle differences in terms of how they do that. So there's many, many lineages, but most commonly we talk about four. There's four kind of the most, I guess, most well-known lineages, you could say. There's the Nyingma lineage, which was the first lineage of Tibetan Buddhism. And then you have three newer lineages, which are the Sakya, Gelug, and Kagyu lineages. So Mingyur Rinpoche, of these four lineages, he actually holds two of them. He holds both the Nyingma lineage, which he received from Nyosho Ken Rinpoche and from his father, Tulku Urgyen Rinpoche. And then he also holds the Nyingma lineage. I might have misspoke there. The Nyingma lineage he holds from his father and Nyosho Ken Rinpoche. And the Kagyu lineage, one of these other four lineages, which he received from Taisito Rinpoche and Selje Rinpoche. So he has four main teachers, and he kind of received both of these two historic lineages. In terms of kind of what makes those different, the Kagyu and Nyingma lineages, I would say, are more on the experiential end of the spectrum and less on the philosophical, which isn't to say they don't have philosophical teachings and the other lineages don't have experiential teachings, but there tends to be a little less emphasis on philosophical study and more practice, more emphasis on the experiential kind of yogic side of the tradition. And then even within that, Mingyur Rinpoche, I would say, is on the far end of the experiential side of things. He really emphasizes kind of getting things down to their essence, how we can experience them directly, and how we can apply them in daily life. So the Kagyu lineage is one of the main lineages he holds. And as I said, that's kind of a very unique lineage within the broader spectrum of Tibetan lineages. But even within that, Rinpoche, I would say he uniquely holds this kind of experiential meditative approach that is kind of the hallmark of how he teaches and the lineages that he holds. So a lot to say, but I would say that's kind of the broad sweeping view of it.
Thanks, Cortland. The next question is actually a couple of questions are in a completely different direction. Probably I can respond to these. I realized that I didn't in the beginning say who I am and that I'm Beth Korchinski, and my role within Tergar is that I'm the Director of Philanthropy, which means that I do fundraising and development. So these next questions are kind of for me. The first is, could the Kickstarter initiative be described or explained? Thank you. And then the second one is, why is there a specific fundraising channel needed for the new Joy of Living app that is separate from general fundraising, such as offerings at retreat or general monthly donations? So this is a really good question. And I would like to say that I don't think I did a good job of explaining this initiative when we first introduced it. So I do think we have to rectify that a little bit. But it kind of all started a long time ago. We've been talking about developing an app for a while, and if you have any familiarity with that area, you realize it's a big undertaking and a significant investment. So last year, along with Cortland and Mingyur Rinpoche, we met with a group of advisors who were giving us advice on how we might be able to approach this, the funding needed for this app and ways to go forward. And the idea came up about trying crowdfunding. And I don't know, Cortland, if it's easy for you to find that one slide, but there's one slide that we had put together for another purpose that I think talks about this a little bit. And so as a result of those conversations, and Mingyur Rinpoche encourages us to try new things all the time. So this is one of the things that we did, we looked at crowdfunding as an option. We looked specifically at Kickstarter, which is a platform that helps organizations launch new programs or products. And, frankly, nonprofits are a big part of Kickstarter and tend to do quite well on the platform, actually outperforming other types of organizations. But really a big thing for us was this second point, which was trying to reach out to another audience, an audience that we don't traditionally meet. And that would be the Kickstarter community. So we felt like it was a good opportunity to reach out to this demographic that fits well with our student base and the types of interests that we have. And then also that it's really a way that we could get community support and kind of rally the community, expand our reach, and kick off the development of the Tergar Joy of Living app. So you can stop sharing now. Thanks. So that's actually the reason why we decided to try something new and why it's a separate platform. So our campaign just ended. We were successful we raised over $170,000 from, I think, something like 560 people, or maybe a few more than that. It was fun and it was interesting. It was a lot of work. I don't know if we'll do it again. But thanks to everyone who, took part in this kind of new type of approach with us. We appreciate it. Cortland, did you want to add anything?
No. Other than I think that point that you mentioned at the beginning, which is that, working with Rinpoche is a really amazing experience. And he himself is just always experimenting and trying new things. He's just kind of fundamentally curious, and he wants to find new and creative ways to do good in the world and to be of service. And he's always encouraging us to think like that as well, and to kind of keep the essence of the teachings, but really to be open and creative when it comes to how we do all the many things that we do. So that's a lot of what's going on behind the scenes. Is we're just trying thinking a little differently and trying to preserve the essence of the teachings, and be open to new ideas about how we bring them into this modern world.
Thanks. Okay, so new topic. There's a bunch of questions that have come in that are sort of related. We'll go through the first one and then maybe pick out some key things that are different from some of the others. I have been a subscriber to both Joy of Living and Vajrayana Online for several years. The content is excellent, and I am very grateful for it. But starting about 6 months ago, it has felt that every time I turn around, Tergar wants more money for the teachings. I understand that it is expensive to run an international organization and don't begrudge you the money you need, but this seems as if Tergar is changing and going in a different, more commercial direction. Please comment. Thank you.
Yeah, I really appreciate these questions. These are questions that we ask. I would say internally, we ourselves are constantly asking these same kinds of questions. And of course, we're a nonprofit. I think there was a question somewhere later on about whether or not we're a 501(c)(3), which is, for those of you not in the US, that basically means a tax-exempt nonprofit organization, which we are. So, yeah, so as a nonprofit organization, of course, nobody's getting rich off this, right? But we need to be financially sustainable. And it's been, I would say from the very beginning, it's been an open question that we've been talking about, we talked to Rinpoche about, of really just how to stay true to our values as an organization devoted to wisdom and compassion as we are. And at the same time, just the realities of the world and what is needed to be sustainable. Um, and I would say, actually, this is even for me a very personal question because the very first thing I ever helped Rinpoche with was before Tergar International was started, and it was the first version of the Tergar Institute, which at that point was in Bodh Gaya, India, which is where I was living part of the year, and I was helping Rinpoche start this institute there. And I very much had this idea of, the Dharma should be free. Like we should try to make this free if possible, or as affordable as we possibly can. I mean, that's in many ways still our value. And it was quite interesting to me that the attempts to actually make it free really ran into some serious challenges. And there are things that we, to this day, we still encounter, which is, for better or worse, the fact that we live in the capitalist world that many of us, live in countries that are kind of living in a capitalist economy. From the time we're little, we tend to equate value with what things are charged for. And it is just kind of a fact that if you look at behavior, not what people say and think, but rather what do we actually do, when we make things free, oftentimes people just don't take it that seriously. Beth mentioned that I launched a new book this week. We had a book event just on Tuesday. This is just one of many, many examples. And it was completely free. And we had more than 1,000 people sign up, and we had to close registration because it hit like 1,000. Basically, we had a capacity in our Zoom account for 1,000 people, but less than half of those people came, and we actually had to turn people away because we had hit the capacity for the event. And that's just normal. Like people don't show up, even if you reach out to them and say, "Hey, let us know if you're not going to come." So there's some challenges, and I don't want to say this is, it's just sort of the reality that we found over the years. In terms of the amount, basically how much we charge, how we determine how much we charge for events. Um, in some cases, things have not changed much for a very long time. For example, despite like massive inflation these past few years in many countries, like what we've charged for Vajrayana Online and Joy of Living Online hasn't changed much. What we charge for some like weekend retreats hasn't changed much. But we do offer a lot of events, and we tend to just have kind of a formula that we do, like the number of days, like we basically charge by the day. So if it's a 4-day event, obviously it will be a different charge than what we do for a day-long event or a 2-day event. And so that's just basically how we come up with what we charge. I would also maybe just be totally transparent about everything we offer. We have a very, very large percentage of people who attend either at a discounted rate, or in some cases a completely, for some events, even totally free. we've always had this policy that we don't turn people away because of financial reasons. So I don't know, Beth, maybe I don't know if you have this information at your fingertips, but we've always had it's been quite a large percentage. Do you remember off the top of your head just how much we tend to offer for like discounted and scholarships, that kind of thing?
I'm not sure once you add in the discounted, but I recall that about 20% of attendees were complimentary at the bulk of the average number of our retreats over the last year.
Okay.
So it
Yeah,
might
that's
be like 40% total that's getting some sort of discount as well, or relief of some kind.
thank you. Thank you, Beth. So, yeah, so long story short, this is something that we talk about endlessly. There's probably not a year that goes by where there's not some discussion of this. Um, and we're also very aware that just with the number of events that we have, it's like there's just a lot of emails going out. And so it probably, because a lot of those events, some of those events are free, but a lot of them, the longer retreats are not free. It probably feels like we're asking for money. Um, but of course, I would maybe just as the final thing, just going back to the original motivation, as a nonprofit, it is true that for some offerings there's kind of like a net revenue gain I mean, there's a profit, so to speak, but that profit doesn't go to any people or person. It actually goes to support other work that we do that oftentimes operates at a loss. So for example, there are many things we offer for free. There are many things that we do in the community space where we don't generate any revenue, but it costs a lot of money to offer them. And so overall, like last year, for example, we had pretty much a balanced budget. It came out where our expenses and revenue were about the same. So yeah, I would say this is one of the more challenging things that we do, is how to keep things accessible and as affordable, and also to make sure that we have the funding available to do all the things that we'd like to keep doing to help people on their journey. So it's a great question, and I just say that we have the same question ourselves and are really always grappling with how to stay true to our values and be sustainable with all the work that we do. So really good question.
Cortland, and there's a kind of a related question that maybe I can take on. And there's other questions that have come in that I didn't see an explicit one here, but this question says, lately there's been a lot of advertising. Once we register for something, please don't keep asking that person to register for the class again and again. It's confusing. And we've also received a few comments about getting a lot of emails. And we want you to know that we hear you and that we are working on a solution. As Cortland said, a lot of it is that we just offer so many things, and so we're promoting to find who would be interested. So we are working on a couple of things. One is that we're reconfiguring our email list to allow you to select specific topics that you're interested in. And so if you're getting an email and you scroll down to the bottom, there's generally a link that says update preferences or something like that. And you'll see that we've added some new categories and some new preference options. So please check that out and see if that's helpful for you. And then about the question about, like, I already registered, you sent me a thing asking me to register. We're aware of that as well. And one solution is using what's called a CRM, a customer relationship management tool. And then that way we'd be able to identify those people who have already registered and not send them an email the second time. So we're in the process of integrating this kind of tool into what we do so that we can be more efficient with our communications and only send you the things that you're directly interested in. So I hope that's helpful. Anything you wanted to add on that topic, Cortland?
No, that was great.
Okay. So I think you mentioned this topic in your presentation, but a specific question that was sent in German. I would really like to register with Vadriana online on the internet. When will the instructions be translated into German? Unfortunately, my English is not good enough to take part there now.
Yeah, great question. I don't have a specific date, but I can say that we have just this year in our plans to support local communities and to support the parts of the Tergar Sangha that are, in different countries, in different language groups. We have put in place some of the things we think will help us to do this more efficiently, so we can make more available in more languages. So I can't say specifically right now, but I think we'll be hearing more about that in the next 3 to 6 months, I would say. Hopefully some more concrete plans.
Thank you. Next question, and this is related to mostly retreats. Why are recordings of events only available for 2 months? And can that be changed? Could it be longer?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I wonder if we can ask one of the events team to come on if they want to answer this, because they'd probably answer it more cogently than I can. What
They
I
put the
can
notes
say,
for us.
yeah. So I don't know if Robin or Christine, if either of you want to come on. In the meantime, I think I can say one thing that is true kind of across the board, as both Beth and I have said, like there's so many events. And if you just look even one year, the number of events we have, and then the number of recordings for each of those events, and then if you just kind of add that up, if we were to keep all the recordings for all of the events for all the time, we would soon have so many. It would just be kind of like an overwhelming amount of pages and things to maintain. And all of this is, although it seems simple, like, oh yeah, you just put up this page and do it. All of this basically is work. It takes real people hours to be maintaining all of those pages and the recordings, and it just becomes kind of unsustainable with the amount of time it would take to do that for all the retreats all the time. So um, we've actually been happy that we can offer them at all because previously, actually, we weren't even doing that. And so this we felt like is a pretty good compromise, that it creates some space for people to catch up if they miss something, or if they want to review something or listen again. But given the amount of retreats we do, I think it probably just isn't, it just simply isn't sustainable. It's the kind of thing that, again, we could do it in theory, but then these are just more people and more time, and beyond what volunteers can probably reasonably do. And therefore it means more money, which means we're charging more for retreats. Honestly, like, nobody's doing this for the money, but it costs money to do it. So I don't know if Robin or Christine, you also feel free to add anything in via the chat too, if you have any additional perspective on that.
Yeah, Christine's sent me a note through WhatsApp about, yes, this conversation is always being reopened, and mentioned the same thing that you did. Robin's having a little internet difficulties. He texted, so he's unable to turn his camera on also. But it's true, Cortland, actually in the beginning, when we first started going online because of the pandemic, Mingyur Rinpoche didn't want us to offer recordings at all. He felt strongly that we should be encouraging people to attend live and receive the teachings live, and so it really was in the beginning we had to go back and forth with Rinpoche a little bit in order to get the recording sort of at all. And then the next question is about community leadership volunteers. I would assume practice coordinators and the typical community group. Will community leadership remain secular? And I believe that's referring to the fact that predominantly our communities are joy of living groups. So any comment about that?
Yeah, so I think the vision is definitely that we support people at all stages of the path. And it really just kind of depends on where an individual community is on, like, its own evolution. So at the beginning, it might be that the communities are primarily focused on anytime, anywhere meditation. and the joy of living, because that's sort of where the community is at. And it's always a challenging thing because oftentimes, those of us who might be kind of starting the community or supporting the community, we might be much further along in our journey. Maybe we're doing Path of Liberation or even have completed the Path of Liberation. And here, when we are now building community, we're kind of going back to the beginning. Rinpoche talks about this idea of kind of a virtuous loop where as we go deeper in our own journey, we start to have this impulse to want to give back to our community. And so it's almost like we start giving back, but it's kind of reconnecting with the beginning of the path because what we're offering is, more entry level teachings that help people get started. But definitely as communities grow, definitely they can and will and should offer the full range of teachings. Like here in Madison, we certainly have teachings that are supporting many different levels of practice. And we've had Path of Liberation retreats here. Of course, we have Joy of Living and everything in between. So it really just depends on where the community's at and what its needs are.
Thanks, Cortland. And there was another question about communities that I moved up because it's related. What is Tergar's commitment to supporting local centers?
Yeah, as I've said a couple times now, this has been a huge focal point. We just had a town hall with Mingyur Rinpoche last weekend where it was really all we talked about specifically about the importance of communities. So I would say that community, as I kind of laid out at the beginning, that was the second slide I showed, um, is really one of the three main things that we do, that we offer in terms of how do we uniquely help people and what is the work that we do in the world. It's really teachings and guidance, a clear path, and community. And that goes back to the very roots of the Buddhist tradition. This is basically the three jewels, the three kind of, most important elements of what Buddhism is all about. So community, as I said, like has been a specific focus this year, and we're just at the beginning of launching like an entirely reimagined view of what Tergar communities are all about and what TI is doing to support them. So we'll be presenting more and more of this in the coming months, but it's going to be a very big focus of everything we do, really.
Thanks, Cortland. The next couple of questions are about our charitable status. So you did address this, but one question that came in French is, what is the status of are we a company, a nonprofit association? How is the funding used? And you talked about the price issue, so we won't bring that up. But yes, Tergar is, as we said, a 501c3, which means in the United States that we are a tax exempt organization. We have no owners. We are organized for the public good, for the benefit of the public good, and so any profits or income that's generated over and above our budget for the year gets reinvested and put back into developing more programs, trying to reach more people. And one of the questions that comes up a lot is about the split, because we are, obviously we charge for a lot of our programs, and it varies from year to year, but historically, it's been about 2/3 of our budget is covered by what we earn from retreat income or course income or that kind of thing. And about 1/3 of our budget is covered by contributed income. So that is donations or grants that we might get from foundations and that kind of thing. And Cortland, could you tell us what was our overall budget for 2024? How big are we
Yeah,
these days?
yeah, we just did a revised budget, and it looks like it's going to be about 6.6 million US dollars. So you can see it's quite of course it's very small by like compared to like massive companies, but for Dharma, Buddhist meditation organizations, the amount of things we're doing is quite extensive, from events all over the world to all the online courses and programs we develop, to the teacher training, to now all this work with community. It's a lot of people. And I think we have around 70 paid staff at this point, most of them full-time staff, and hundreds of contractors, of people who are helping out, on a kind of less of a time commitment, but who are contractors for Tergar. And then beyond that, we have hundreds and hundreds of volunteers, probably more than 1,000 of volunteers when you add up everybody all over the world who's helping in various ways.
Yeah, thanks, Cortland. So we have about 10 minutes left, a little under 10 minutes left. So we should still have time for a couple more questions. We have a lot that have already come in, so we're not necessarily looking for people to submit more, but just wanted to do a time check. The next question here, this is a good one, and it comes up every so often. Are there any plans to create a Tergar for Children program? I think it would be invaluable to help our young people understand and befriend their monkey mind at a far younger age than waiting for adulthood and only then discovering these wonderful teachings.
Yeah, well, having just being a new empty nester, we have a 19-year-old who literally is just leaving home, and having kind of raised him in hopefully a meditative household. This has always been something that I've been personally interested in and thinking about. So we have had some programming, and specifically we put together some programming for parents. And I think what we are doing now, what our focus is now, is on creating a context. Like I talked about, what will probably be a platform that is going to allow kind of more ground up activities in the community for people who are interested in certain areas. So it could be parents, and who want to talk about how they can bring some of these teachings and practices at home with their families and kids, or it could be teachers who want to do it professionally at school. In addition to other topics, people who are interested in social justice or climate change or, any number of issues. We really want to kind of create space where people within the community can gather together around topics that they're interested in and that are important for the community. This is certainly would be at the top of the list. So that's kind of what we're focused on right now. And yeah, as I said a few times, you'll be hearing more and more about this in the coming, I would say, 6 months or so. We should have more to share about this.
Thanks, Cortland. And also, for those who have children or grandchildren, we have a special interest group for parents and grandparents. It's an opportunity to practice together and have, conversations around these topics. So I believe that information is on our communities page. If I can find it, I'll put it in the chat after I ask this next question. You did talk about this a little bit, Cortland, but I'm not sure how specific this person is looking for a number. How many people subscribe to Tergar Learning Community?
So it's a pretty easy time to answer that, because it's almost exactly 3,000 people are in our Vajrayana online program, and another 3,000 roughly are in our Joy of Living program. So there's probably some overlap. So I wouldn't say it's 6,000 people, because there's probably some people who subscribe to both. But that's what we can say now. It's basically 3,000 people are subscribing to each of those different programs. Sorry, I didn't give Beth enough time to.
No, I got it. I got it.
You got it.
I put the link. The link I just put in the chat will take you to our communities page. And if you scroll down, you'll see we actually have 3 special interest groups, and one of them is for parents and grandparents. Okay, great. Now I have to get back to my questions list. Oh, and actually, Cortland, there's subscribing to our courses, but then there's also like being having a Tergar learning community ID, like your Tergar ID that you can log into the community. And that is a much larger number. I believe it's somewhere closer to 20,000 or something like that, people who have an ID to access our pages. Okay, and then the next question is about when will there be explanations for doing the Dorje Drolo Nundro on Vajrayana Online? And if so, when can we expect this?
Yes, great question. So I mentioned earlier that we are going to be offering new courses, and these will be in Vajrayana Online, which is kind of the home for Path of Liberation students. And basically, there will be a course for each Path of Liberation level. So we're starting with Nectar of the Path. So we'll do all the levels for Nectar of the Path. And then we will start adding in the new courses for those who are doing Ngundro practice, and specifically people who are doing the Dorje Drolo Ngundro. So that will all be coming out, and it'll look very different than like the current Ngundro course. So we already have a very intensive Ngundro course in Vajrayana Online, which is kind of like the theory of Vajrayana, or sorry, the theory of Ngundro. These new courses, as I said, they will almost look closer to Joy of Living if you've done a Joy of Living online course, where it's almost like the course goes along with you for the whole duration that you're doing that level. So it'll be, much more support, guided practices, live webinars, and things like that. So those, we've already started doing them for Nectar of the Path. And over the next year or so, we'll be adding in all of the Ngundro courses and the remaining Nectar of the Path courses. So those will be coming over time.
Great, thanks. So we have just a couple minutes left, but I know that this is a question that comes up for a lot of people. Actually, there's been several questions about prerequisites and the path of liberation. And so someone is asking, is it only possible to get initiated in person for Path of Liberation? And when is the next opportunity? And then just kind of a general, how do I connect with the Path of Liberation? I can't seem to find my way into this. So maybe we could address those questions before ending.
Yeah, so what the main thing I would say for both of these questions is I would really, really recommend talking to a Tergar guide. So in Vajrayana Online, or in Joy of Living Online for that matter, you can set up an appointment. You can basically a practice interview. And this is exactly why we've done that. If you are stuck in the path at any point, or you're confused, or you're not sure what the next step is, that is exactly why we've created this opportunity to have one-on-one conversations, because like this happens to everybody at some point or another. It's just confusing. We're not sure what to do or what the options are, or maybe we know the options, but we're just not sure if it's the right step for us. So that's what I would really say is the best thing. And we are just so lucky that we have just these amazing guides. We have people like, Antonia and Mioshin and Tim and Edwin and Kunsong and Lucas and Kasumi. And like, we just are blessed to have really remarkable people who have done so much deep practice, genuinely compassionate people. So we're just lucky to have these people in our community, and that they make their time available to support us on the path. So that's the main thing I would say, is to do that. As far as like specifically, if you are unable to travel, if some people have financial issues, sometimes it's physical issues or health issues. Again, I think it's much easier to answer, setting up a meeting with Tim or another guide, and they can really help figure that out. That's really the best way to do it.
Thanks, Cortland. Thanks. And I just wanted to mention that, if you aren't a current subscriber on Joy of Living or Vajrayana Online, send us an email to info@tergar.org, and let us know that you're interested in connecting with a guide, and we'll help you do that. Because, they're always interested in that's what, why they're there. They're interested in
Yeah,
helping
great
people
point.
with
Thanks,
that.
Beth.
So, yeah. Okay, well, gosh, we got more questions that we could answer. Every time we have an event like this, I'm always worried. What if no one asks anything? But it was we got more questions than we had time to answer, and also some people did submit practice questions, and we just didn't have time for any of those. But just as Cortland was just mentioning, connect with a Tergar guide if you have some lingering practice questions. And I'm sure people will be happy to help out. So, any last comments that you'd like to make, Cortland, before we
Yeah, I'm just
say goodbye?
grateful, for those of you who came, the whole Tergar team, especially you, Beth, and the whole Tergar team for helping to make this possible. And just to echo what Beth just said, we really, really want people to feel like you can ask anything, especially the hard questions. If you're ever just feeling like, "Oh, I don't get this," or something feels off to you, or you're just confused by something, we really want everybody to feel like there's somewhere to go, and you don't even have to wait for an event like this. You can email us. We'd love to hear from you. And we don't always, of course, we love to hear nice things, but we want to hear the hard questions too. We really want to know when people have concerns or you're feeling stuck or whatever it might be. So anything and everything, just please consider that there's always an open door. Not only are we willing to hear from you, we actively want to hear from you. And really, at the end of the day, this is all just the best we can. We want to do the best we can in supporting you and everyone else on their own journey, and to do this together as a community. So thank you for taking time out of your day. I know it's for some of you probably really late at night. For others of you, it's a nice weekend day. So thank you for taking time and look forward to connecting with you somewhere further down the path.
Thank you so much, Cortland. We really appreciate it. And I'd also like to thank my colleagues behind the scenes, Kezia and Leah, and all the translators, and Robin and Christine, and everyone who helped to contribute to this event. So thank you so much. And yeah, we look forward to seeing you at some future. Oh, and I want to say a special thank you to one of our board members, Annie, who joined us today. I don't know if you want to turn on your camera and wave or something, Annie. But so thanks for joining us. And oh, there you are. Hi, Annie. And so thanks again, everyone, for being here. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and we'll see you at some other Tergar event in the future. Bye.